So my crazy life is continuing even more so. Tomorrow I leave for Tulum, which is in Mexico, which is another 13-hour flight to LA before we head across. Now, this year alone, I have been to America twice. This will be my third trip and it's only May. I have been to New Zealand, Melbourne, 2 Sydney trips and Fiji. So I feel like all I have been doing is traveling and on planes. And a lot of people have been asking me in regards to what food I do eat on the plane and how I travel. So I thought today I would give you a little bit more insight into what I take with me, how I loosely track versus how I strictly track when I'm competing to travel, knowing that a lot of these flights I have actually been going across to compete. So the first trip across I competed in Ohio, which again was 2 flights to get to Ohio and a long travel time. Then I did Pittsburgh, New Zealand was for competition, Melbourne was for competition. So during those flights I was a lot more strict than what I was, say maybe for tomorrow when I go to Mexico, it'll be a lot looser tracked. Now I like to know what I am eating, even if I am loosely tracking, based on the fact that I want to make sure that my body is getting enough protein for recovery and making sure that I do get enough carbs in for my energy, and knowing that when I do get back I'm not eating 1200 calories. When I left I was eating say 3000 calories. And I know that when I'm on holiday it is action-packed, so it's going one place here, one place there, especially with work trips. We have something on every single day and it's hard to be able to fit in food, making sure that I'm eating regularly, so I like to be able to track to know what I'm eating. Now, one question that I have been getting asked quite a bit is what I eat on those long distance, long haul flights. Now, the flight from Brisbane to LA is 13 hours and it's a long, long flight. What I try and do is look at where I'm going to be when I arrive at my destination and see the time zones and the time differences. Now, as you can see behind me, I just got home from Pittsburgh. I have competition bands, I have spray tanning machines, I have everything under the sun, and I have to repack tonight ready for tomorrow. So it is a bit crazy. Our life at the moment is all over the shop. So I'm going to not only show you the foods that I prepare and how I travel and meal prep while I am traveling, but also what I do when I'm traveling overseas and interstate for competition as well, for those of you that are maybe competing overseas and want to know some of my tips and what helps for me. Now, first things first is the long haul flight. So I like to plan out the time zones when I am going overseas, and I know that for Pittsburgh, for example, it is the polar opposite to what Australian time is. So if it's like 10 p.m. here, it might be 1 a.m. there, or 10 p.m. here is 10 a.m. there. So I plan out my days in advance to know what the time zones are in my schedule, in my diary, ready to go to make sure that I am aware of getting my body clock sorted and more on their schedule and time zone, so that when I get there I'm not staying awake for 2 or 3 days. Now, my biggest thing when I get on the plane is basically trying to sleep. When I get on that plane, whether it's nighttime flight here or early morning flight here, it's nighttime over there. So the first thing I do is try and sleep as much as I humanly possibly can, and I break the flight down into days. So I work out my macros according to 1 full day here, and then because we lose a day when we go to the States, I've got a whole nother day to catch up on. So usually what I do is I actually break it down into half a day's macros for the Australian leg of my trip, and then I break it into the other half for the day's macros for the other half of the trip. Now, I take my full scales in my checked on luggage, ready to go, and I take on my little scales in my hand luggage, in my handbag, but I've also planned out all of my food ready to go until I get to my destination point. Now, even if I wasn't tracking, I don't know about you, but I really do not love airport food. And anything worse than that is I don't like plane food. I know that it's just not great. So what I try and do is I try and pack things that I'm allowed to take on the plane with me. Now, as long as it's not over 100 meals, they will let you take most things on a plane. If you are wanting to take pre-prepared meals with you, you can freeze them and take them through customs. It's just that when you get into the country, you have to put them in the bin. So if it's for the plane, that's fine. And then from there, you can take things like oats. The other thing that I like to do is take Happy Way sachets, because all you need is water and you pour it into your protein shaker, and you've got oats, protein shaker, and everything's planned out in advance, ready to go. You can also know in advance foods that they're going to have on the plane, or snacks or popcorn or things like that that you can take with you, knowing what you are eating and what you can have readily available to you until you get to your destination point. Now, if I am traveling for competition, what Nath will do, who's obviously my coach, is break everything down into a day as well as what I'm actually doing. So the activity, the booking, the time, and any additional details. So he will give me all of my macros for that day, for the whole week, for the whole time that I'm away if I am competing. Now, given that tomorrow is a work trip, but I'm not actually competing, I will loosely track based on the macros that I'm trying to currently hit whilst I'm there. I will take my scales and I will take my Happy Way travel sachets of protein just to make sure that I can get them in if there's not food readily available for me, so that I'm not starving hungry and that I'm not losing muscle, because I guess for me personally, my goals are to not lose muscle. So that is a huge, huge thing for me, is to have everything pre-prepared and pre-planned out in my mind. The other thing is that we've gone to America quite a few times for me to compete now, that I know the foods that I can have over there, so it's easier for Nate to be able to plan out my days in advance of what I can eat whilst I am there. So that's what we do in regards to food. Now, when I am traveling for competition, I have a few things and a few tips that I guess I do. Now, a lot of people get spray tanned by the sponsor company or whoever's looking after it in the particular town that you are visiting. I just found for me it's easier to take my own spray tanning machine. It is an American spray tanning machine and I purchased it online, and I take that with me, which makes life so much easier because I don't have to leave my hotel. I don't have to go out in the dark. I don't have to worry about getting covered up or anything like that. So it works really well for me and for what I kind of do. Now, the other thing that I do is buy an American hairdryer. They were $13 and it's got an American point because the voltage is different in America. Now, I learnt that the hard way after I blew up my good hairdryer and my good tanning machine by taking it over, because the wattage is different. So they are little tips for me that really help. Now, the other thing is that traveling from airport to airport, Pittsburgh, for example, was 4 flights to get there. You can take just bands, as well as the bod booty bands on the plane with you for your stopovers in airports if you want to get moving, if that's something of interest to you. The booty bands are amazing to travel with regardless, based on the fact you can do a hotel workout in your room or the park or the beach or anywhere you are without requiring a gym. Now, I know that a lot of places obviously would have access to a gym, but it depends where you're traveling and how active you do want to be whilst you are traveling. Now, a lot of people also ask me in regards to sodium whilst traveling, water whilst traveling. Now, I find that for me, my body doesn't hold a lot of water when I am flying. It's usually when you have a lot of sodium in your body or you're eating really bad heavy food and then you hop on a plane that your body will react badly to the altitude changes. So for me, I hop on the plane, I try and fall asleep for as long as I can, drink water regularly as you normally would, and then when you arrive in your destination, restart the day as a whole new day. It's super important not to sit on the plane and eat for the whole time you are there, because you are a lot bored than you normally would be. You're sitting there, so yeah, plan out in advance your days, what you're going to eat, make sure that you do have snacks with you that you can track, and have an amazing time. Now, if I was traveling to compete, how I track versus when I'm traveling for a work trip or a holiday or a hobby trip is going to be a lot different to, competition. So when I am competing, I try and always make sure that I get stuff that is 100% trackable. whether that's cooking it myself, asking for a fridge in my room or a microwave or something that I can heat my food and cool my food is very, very important when I am traveling to compete. So I usually live on low fiber foods the couple of days before my competitions, which is things like low fiber oats, rice cakes, things that are super low in fiber, so that I am not bloated for stage. Now, that's super easy to get in most supermarkets and grocery stores when you are traveling. Now, if you were tracking and traveling a little bit looser, what you can do is just take your pocket scales with you wherever you go. Now, if you're ordering, say, a steak, usually steaks have the gram size on the menu, so whether it's 200 grams or 250 grams, you can loosely track that. If you're eating out at a chain, you can usually find the nutritional breakdown available to you on the website or in store or in wherever you are eating. Now, I know that in the States, places like the Cheesecake Factory have all of the breakdown of all of their nutritional content. So most places that are big towns will have places like that that you can loosely track. If you were wanting to track whilst you are on holiday, and say, for example, you were out for dinner and you had a piece of fish, you could discreetly put these on, double check how much your grams of fish is and track it. To be honest, you could, once you have built up a couple of years of tracking, you can loosely look at the plate and figure out what is on your food, depending on your goals. So if you're competing, that's probably not ideal, but just for lifestyle, I feel like everybody needs a bit of balance in their life, and a little bit of food is definitely not going to hurt. So that's my kind of take on it. So when I am traveling, I will take these in my handbag, these in my suitcase just because they're bigger and easier to use, and always make sure that I can take foods on the plane that I can track and that I have planned out in advance in ahead. So I hope that that helps you, give you a little bit more insight into how I travel, how I track, what I'm doing when I'm competing, and what I need to take with me. I am heading to Tulum tomorrow, so I cannot wait to show you our adventures over there. Please make sure that you comment below and over on my Instagram as to what you want to see and how much detail you want to see. Remembering that the vlogs I cover and the topics that I cover on my vlogs are ones that you suggest. So the more you suggest, the more I'm able to give back to you all of content that you want to see. Thanks guys, and I hope that you enjoyed. I'm off to Tulum.